Hello, hello, hello. This is the Vanilla JavaScript podcast. I'm Chris Ferdinandi. Thanks for joining me. Today, I wanted to talk about the Fetch API and specifically something I learned last week, which is that it's actually potentially more performant than XHR, which was really surprising. So, late last year, I finally came around to using Fetch instead of XHR to make API calls. For a really long time, I was like diehard on XHR is simpler, better, just kind of my preferred approach. And I finally kind of saw the light on that and realized that Fetch is super rad. And I've been missing out. And I'm going to drop a link down in the show notes to the article I wrote on that and kind of my changing course there. But the portal that my students use to access any of my courses that they've purchased was already working just fine with XHR. So I kind of held off on updating it because I already had working code. And last week, or I guess 2 weeks ago now, I finally decided to update it to use Fetch instead of XHR. What I wasn't prepared for was how noticeably faster that made the site. And because XHR has been around for so long, I expected that browsers would be better optimized for it and it would be more performant, but I was wrong. Alex Russell, who's a developer on the Google Chrome team, explained that Fetch will be the same as XHR at the network level. So meaning the amount of time it takes to actually make the API call itself isn't any faster. But for things like decoding JSON, it can do that work off thread because the API contract is promise-based up front. And so what that means is that normally if I was making an API call to get JSON data back and I was using XHR, once that data comes back, I have to use JSON parse to convert that string that I get back into an object. And using JSON parse to do that is blocking. It's part of the just kind of the normal flow of JavaScript, which works synchronously and kind of runs things in real time. So when I get the data back, no other things can happen while JSON parse is running. But with Fetch, because it's promise-based, it can actually convert that string into JSON asynchronously in the background while other stuff is happening, which makes it more efficient, which is really cool. So how much faster actually is it? When I tweeted about this last week, I had a few folks ask me exactly how much faster it is. And I'm an idiot and didn't think to take before and after metrics to measure the difference. So I'm not 100% sure. I suspect a lot of it will depend on how many products of mine someone has. More products means larger JSON payloads to parse. Anecdotally, and I have all of my products in my view of the portal. So I would have a pretty large JSON return, so the performance would be better for me. It must be at least 100 milliseconds or so faster, though, because that's about the minimum amount of latency that humans can detect before something feels instant. And this was not something I was looking for. I didn't do it to make my site faster. I just did it to kind of update some stuff and remove another JavaScript dependency, and or just make my code base smaller. And when I loaded up the page, I was like actually shocked. I wasn't expecting it to be faster. I'm like, oh, this feels faster. I talked to some of my students about it. They verified that the site felt faster for them too, that a lot of kind of the waiting that used to happen was gone. So the unfortunate thing here is that if you're using Fetch to get HTML, there's no equivalent way to make that promise-based. The text method with Fetch still gets you the HTML as a string, but to parse it into real HTML still requires a synchronous JavaScript call that's going to block other code from running. So the key takeaway here for me is that if you're working with large JSON payloads and you want to give your site a little bit more of a performance boost, consider switching old XHR API calls to Fetch. But if you're getting HTML, you won't see the same performance benefits and you can hold off. While the improvement was perceivable, the most important kind of performance increase, it was slight. So on the scale of performance optimizations, this is a lot less important than other things you should do first. And if you already have functioning code, this could be something you skip if you just don't feel like it. So that's it for today. If you want to finally master JavaScript, head over to vanillajsguides.com and check out my pocket guides and video courses. They're short, focused, and made for beginners. You'll learn the ins and outs of a topic in under an hour, and as a listener of this show, you can take 30% off with the code PODCAST at checkout. That's it for today. See you next time. Cheers.